Do you have a really bright kid who can't get anything done? Well, they might have executive functioning issues. Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann, and we are diving into giftedness and executive functioning issues and having a 2E kid. So, many people who have neurodivergent brains who are also really intellectually gifted might have other issues like ADHD, executive functioning, they might have anxiety, they might have a lot of things going on. But executive functioning is completely different than intelligence, right? So let's dive into executive functioning. I'm going to explain it because most people really don't know what it is. Even educators will tell me that they'd never heard of anybody give the neuropsych explanation. So let's start off with what's the difference between executive functioning and attention? Because most people think they are the same. So, attention is your brain's ability to alert, and executive functioning is that part of the brain that is the job manager that helps you to organize and plan for some future action or event, right? Now you're having an aha moment, right? Because you're thinking, okay, my really bright kid never thinks about the future. They, never plan for assignments. They wait till 9 o'clock the night before. This is pretty common in executive, having executive functioning issues and giftedness because a lot of really bright people just rely on their intelligence and they don't really think that they have to work that hard because they often don't. But when it comes to schoolwork, you can't just rely on your intelligence. You have to actually produce things, right? Which is maddening for a lot of teachers and parents and can be really frustrating for kids too because they're so used to being able to just kind of listen in class, just put something in and get it done. But now, things have changed so much since, we went to school in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? That's all the parents who are listening you know, we could kind of flub it, right? Because we learned a lot of content and you didn't have to produce as much. But today kids have to do a lot. So when we have good executive functioning, we can think in results. We see the end product and we're able to actually do those steps to produce it. And just because you have an IQ that's, 99th percentile, you got a 135, you got a 145 IQ, does not mean you can get anything done, right? These are super smart adults who wind up having amazing administrative assistants, formerly called secretaries. Um, and we as parents become the admins to the kids, which we don't want to be. We want them to be regulated, right? And if you're new to me and you want to learn more about some of the things that we do, certainly jump into our free Facebook group. It's drroseann.com/group. It's natural parenting solutions. We talk a lot about these things in a safe space. So join us. So, what's the intersection between twice exceptional and executive functioning? So, if your job manager, as I always like to say, is on a perpetual coffee break, you're not going to be getting those grades. You're not going to be successful in the way that you should in not just academics, but at home, doing extracurricular activities, because again, you can't just rely on intelligence. And executive functioning means that you're seeing the end result, you're able to plan accordingly, not just your actions, but the items you need, right? The steps. And, again, in terms of academics, what's that project, right? So, when we talk about strategies and how to support people, please go back and listen to my entire executive functioning series. Love talking about executive functioning. And, unlike most unqualified ADHD quote unquote experts who really just are moms that are health coaches, they really don't have training in the brain. And, when we talk about executive functioning, it's the frontal lobes that are in charge. And it's not just the frontal lobes that are interacting or controlling everything because they actually are interacting with every part of the brain. So that job manager, is working with the limbic system and emotional control, right? So we might have an intellectually gifted kid who just has poor emotional control. We might have an intellectually gifted kid who's really poor planning related to math. That's a different part of the brain. So, how do we support our kids? One, right? We always talk in results. So, just because your kid is bright, how many times, if I had like a dime for every time somebody told me, "My kid's so bright, he should be doing better." Well, if the executive functioning isn't working, right, how do we get that how do we get that to change? It's not medication, it's actually learning skills. So that first skill is to teach in end results, talk in end results. What does it look like, right? When it's done, Joey. Anna, show me, walk me through physically what you're going to be doing and have kids gesture. And, your kid can be a teenager and still do this. This is really speaking to their learning style, right? So most of our neurodivergents are exclusively kinesthetic and or visual learners. It's not common to have an auditory learner who is a neurodivergent. I mean, they can have good auditory skills, but their learning style is kinesthetic or visual. I'm actually such an auditory person, but my learning style is actually visual. I was kind of shocked by that. But when I started implementing visual strategies in undergraduate school, right when I was an undergraduate, my grades just like went to a whole other level as a neurodivergent myself in math disability. Got to tell everybody that. So getting them to see end results and work backwards. Don't start with a checklist. They have no anchor for a checklist. They don't know what you're talking about. They're irritated. And I think with gifted kids, right, one of the struggles that they have is they think they're so smart, they don't need these things. That's a conversation I've had with many gifted teenagers. I got this. I don't have to do it, right? One of my favorite gifted kids is going to a fancy schmancy uh, university in Europe, so I don't wanna say where it is, but, I mean, the struggles that we had to get him over that was himself, right? We've regulated his brain so easily with neurofeedback, but he just had this, like, "I got it, Doctor Rowe, I'm a smart kid." And I would let's call him Michael. I'd be like, "Michael, what are you doing?" And actually my nephew Michael is gifted, and he's totally executive functioning impaired and, would just fight me on those things because he came to live with me for 2 years. And, he learned a lot. Like, it was like, you have to want this for yourself and you have to show them, right? By teaching them the strategies and how effective they are. And remember, their language is visual and kinesthetic. And when we support that with those strategies, there can be huge gains. Go back again, listen to that whole series. It's awesome. And what I want to talk about is let's talk about addressing dysregulation in social because just again, because you're gifted doesn't mean you have the social skills. And we tend to table social and emotional and when it comes to what do we do? Do we focus on the academics? Do we focus on the social emotional? And I'm going to tell you that 9 times out of 10, parents do the wrong thing. You should focus on social and emotional. And it's so important. I was at a party yesterday for a neurodivergent kid and there were a lot of parents who of neurodivergence there and they all wanted to talk to me about a lot of things, but the number one thing they wanted to talk to me about was the social emotional component of their kids and how anxious they were and how they had all felt like they only option that was presented to them was that they should go on medication for the anxiety and they were all like, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do, how do I get them off? And I think that a lot of times we feel like, well, if we get the academics in place, right, we make them successful there, and this is a double-edged sword, right? So there's no easy road, but if we make that work, well, then all the emotional part would disappear. And what they found is that that wasn't the case, and that there were so many wounds that were there, and obviously, it's a path that you have to address at the same time, but we always wanna support that dysregulation, right? So, just like in our dysregulation solution, in our calm brain community, it's all about strategies to calm the nervous system. When we have like our 2E kids can have both that understimulation and overstimulation of the nervous system. And once that nervous system is dysregulated, they're not learning in the same way. And that means executive functioning is going to break down. Yeah, these kids are Ferraris. And so they have this amazing engine. And so they have more things that can compensate. But compensation is not the skill. It's the workaround. And so we have to build skills, and executive functioning skills can be built in emotional regulation, right? Helping them to see the big picture, gain those coping skills. That's executive functioning is a part of that, and manage their frustration. So really bright individuals with neurodivergence often are irritated more easily because it's not easy, and they feel it more strongly when something is harder, right? And I'm always amazed at my, like, average, intellect kids that have learning disabilities because 'cause they're pluggers. They just do it. They're like, it's always hard." But then, I get somebody with a high IQ, they're just much more likely to dysregulate. And those dysregulations, right, the emotional reactions, can really create conflicts with peers, with parents. They can create walls between other kids who don't dysregulate, who don't know what to do about it. And so focusing on coping skills, really helping your 2E kid to accept themselves and their brain in all its beautiful imperfections, and helping them to understand nobody's perfect, and making sure you're role modeling imperfection. I'm a master at role modeling perfection. I was telling a story yesterday, and I don't remember what I was talking about, but I was like, "Oh, I don't really make a lot of mistakes," and John Carlo quickly was like, "What you talking about, mom?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I make mistakes all the time. I just meant in regard to this one thing," and I was glad. I was glad. I always get called out by those Hodge kids. Anyway, so if you're looking for more support, right, you can go to drroseann.com/help. This is our amazing solution matcher that's going to guide you to where you're at. And I hope I got you thinking differently. And remember, executive functioning skills can be taught, and you got the power.